Welcome to this special edition of the New Stack Makers on the road for KubeCon EU 2022 in Valencia, Spain. Discussions from the show floor with technologists giving you the expertise and insights that will help you in your everyday work.
KubeCon and CloudNativeCon conferences gather adopters and technologists to further the education and advancement of cloud-native computing. The vendor-neutral events feature domain experts and key maintainers behind popular projects like Kubernetes, Prometheus, Envoy, Core DNS, Containered, and more.
Hi, it's B. Cameron Gain, correspondent today with the New Stack, and I'm here in Valencia, Spain at KubeCon 2022. And I'm here today to talk about Kubernetes deployments done by a very large telecom provider. It is Deutsche Telekom, one of the largest telecoms in Europe. And I'm speaking today with Christopher Dziomba and Samy Nitsche from Deutsche Telekom.
Hello, Samy Nitsche from Deutsche Telekom, and happy to be here.
Chris, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, I'm Christopher Dziomba. I'm with Deutsche Telekom. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
What interests me a lot is, could you say that it's not very typical for a telecom provider to deploy Kubernetes and enter the cloud native space, given, needless to say, the immense amount of legacy infrastructure? And if I can say this, telecoms aren't necessarily thought of as technology leaders in many cases. They've been around for, how long has Deutsche Telekom been around? And maybe in that context, you could talk about your digital journey to cloud native.
Yeah, so Deutsche Telekom in general has been around for a long time. And we've been kind of really in a position where we go to vendors and say, hi, especially in the past with 2G and 3G, give us a box. We put that in our network that provides a service and everyone is happy. That's kind of the model of, okay, we buy it, we put it there. They might have support from the vendor and so on. Let's say already with 4G coming in, that shifted a bit. So that shifted a bit towards, okay, hey, we don't want no longer a hardware, a physical box for most of the stuff, but we actually want to have it either running just bare metal on commodity hardware, or we want it running as something virtualized on top of, let's say, OpenStack or VMware. And then it already came like, okay, we need to provide the platform by ourselves, and then the vendors are coming in. Okay. But they are still kind of bringing black boxes like VMs to the party, right. And it's the VMs. And with 5G coming ahead, and also with 5G now at the point, also 2 years ago, we started a journey of, hey, 5G is ahead, and also it brings in really the opportunity to mix and match kind of also vendors for different functions, because if you look at the functions, they are kind of like microservices, if you want to call them that way. You can kind of mix and match them, but it's also suited to be deployed on something like Kubernetes. And The decision was made actually to build the Kubernetes platform by ourselves inside Deutsche Telekom, and to buy one to kind of facilitate the move towards cloud native infrastructure. And that's really how it came to be.
How did you do that? You said you built your own Kubernetes infrastructure. How is that done?
Yeah, so we kind of, from a technical perspective or from a process perspective?
Both,
yeah.
You're starting from scratch.
We really started from scratch, and 2 years ago was really nothing there in the telco world, let's say it that way. So we started with the idea that, okay, we want to use Cluster API for our cluster management. That's the thing we've said we really, really want. And we also heavily wanted to focus on GitUps, which is, in my opinion, in a telco world, really unique. I mean, we've heard on Monday on the Cloud Native Telco Day that we are not the only ones, but I think we were one of the first to actually embrace GitOps in our telco concept.
Yeah.
And it's really, to be honest, it's a game changer for us because we're coming from the legacy perspective. I think Samy can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
With changes going through change management processes, and then a human actually doing it. But now we are really focusing on GitOps, the declarative Kubernetes approach with reconciliation and so on going on. There are basically changes going on the whole time.
Yeah.
That's kind of a culture shift. Yeah.
Yeah, that, indeed. And that GitOps, in many cases, has been called the immutable infrastructure, which is necessary for something like this. And
I mean, there's a major change in the whole telco world, and especially the processes are changing dramatically. So if you compare it to the legacy world, the era Christopher just mentioned, so the old black boxes, you probably also bought some vendor-specific software management systems, and you build your processes on top of that. Now, with the cloud-native era, we are also shifting, or we need to shift our processes also to the new world to be effective, to be able to manage the complexity, because there is a new complexity. So we really see that, we have more complexity like in the old world. And we, of course, need to compensate that so that we, are able to manage the complexity.
But I mean, how did you convert, or what is the connection? And I'm assuming, again, the GitOps is providing the core process and discipline, if you could call it, and where you're integrating very old infrastructure. We're talking about decades old. And at the same time, you're pulling the data together on Git, and you have those GitOps processes in place. So, how does that work? I mean, I'm trying to get my head around this because, obviously the GitOps part for CD is going to help maintain the clusters and ensure the security aspect, et cetera. But going to the CI aspect of it, or where you're integrating all this legacy infrastructure, how does that come into play, and how did you do that?
With GitOps, we are focusing on the best practices also coming from the software era, let's say like this.
Yeah.
So we can build on principles like infrastructure as code or don't repeat yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have the same challenges like the software world also have. And we can benefit also from these principles, from these frameworks to be, as I said, to remove the complexity again. And I would say that's a major benefit. So we can really see in our daily operations that we see a lot of benefits. Of course, it's still some challenges, of course, left and right. But we are, as I said, we are moving and we have this process of getting to the cloud or moving to the cloud native era.
And maybe actually adding to that, we were really in a position to, the whole industry is kind of moving towards cloud native or containers, more or less. So we've seen that, for example, we have one of our Lighthouse projects, which is, I'm more on the platform side, to be honest. So we have one of our Lighthouse projects, which is 5G Core, where Samy is also from the team here. And this was kind of also a standalone project. It's kind of integrated into some legacy systems.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's really a new build of something,
Nice.
an independent build.
Okay.
So you could, at least for some part, really build it independently from legacy systems and not have to mostly rely on them. But of course, there is this integration part into, we have policies around how we do change management, for example, and we need to kind of work with the teams doing that together to ensure that we are kind of pushing these policies to a cloud-native world, but also for us to see, okay, maybe something that they've done in the legacy world wasn't even that bad, so we might also take a bit of that into it. So yeah, it's kind of like also a discussion with the other teams if we want or how we want to do this kind of legacy integration and especially policy and process integration. Let's say it that way. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, you are contributing to a project, an open source project, or what is the open source component of that? And are you contributing to the community during your work time? And how does that work? And are you actually doing pull requests, or what are you doing in that respect?
Our team actually does a lot of communication with open source projects.
Yeah.
As we use Flux heavily, we are also deeply connected with Weaveworks.
Yeah.
Working together with them mostly on it, and they are also kind of open source first.
Yeah.
So they have their Flux open source version, which we provide bugs to them.
Yeah.
Maybe even raise pull requests.
Yeah.
A different project, which in our case is Cluster API. We have one active or kind of active Cluster API maintainer on the team.
Okay.
Who's Jakob, who's participating in Cluster API and bringing our opinion to it as well. But we also use other open source projects, and for that it's probably mostly issues, but also sometimes pull requests as well. But we really try to be nice citizens around open source projects and not just throw stuff over the fence, basically.
You're doing pull requests.
Yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah, excellent. And would you say that to characterize your, going back to cloud native, and I guess we can say Kubernetes clusters management, what is the scale of the clusters deployed now, and how would you characterize the application? I'm going to, of course, edge applications play a part, but how would you characterize your Kubernetes infrastructure in that respect?
From a characterization perspective, we are quite heavily centralized in a small 2-digit number of locations, or maybe a 1-digit number of locations right now. However, with a 3-digit number of clusters, like 150 or so. Workload perspective, it's mostly network technology, not really IT. Maybe a bit of operations technology around the network components, like management for that, dashboards, logging stacks, monitoring stacks, and so on. Like all the stuff that you need around your applications. And from a network technology perspective, it's really everything that you imagine that is coming towards our platform as well. Like we have 5G core, we have some other components of the 5G stack, like PCF, which is a policy stuff, UDM, which is kind of the user database management. It's also IMS pushing in our direction, so also the voice part. That's also something that is going to be cloud native maybe in the future.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no turning back.
And Iran
now.
as well.
Yeah, and Iran, and
the demand
really,
is there.
Yeah.
Why would you say that? I mean, the demand's there, but could you say that it's no turning back at this point? I mean, as far as cloud native goes, it's Kubernetes, and we don't see anything replacing that, or it's too late now not to go with Kubernetes. This is an existential question, I bet.
I mean, if you look on the 5G core standard, like Christopher said, it's going to the microservice architecture. Also because there are a lot of benefits like independent scaling mechanisms and a lot of ideas flowing around. And basically, I would say that Kubernetes is set for this specifically. So I would not say that there's any other solution or anything available to replace it. Or the standard is defining it like the microservice architecture.
Yeah.
And there are of course a lot of use cases also for the future, like network slicing, where you really slice the network in different parts, and there are a lot of use cases in front of us, and a lot of innovations happening in this area.
So telecom's exciting after all, or not?
Yeah, it is definitely something that is really nice. I mean, we really have this kind of green field where we can actually build the Kubernetes platform, and also with Deutsche Telekom kind of work also together with the network function vendors to make it better, of course, or to try to make it better. And it's really not anymore this, we just buy a black box, put it into a network part, but it's really getting exciting. That's really, really nice. Yeah.
So we are also involving the vendors in this migration, because they are also, most of them also coming from the old world. So it's also sometimes a challenge to make sure that the application is really also cloud native, and that you can even use all the benefits from Kubernetes.
And it seems, and going back to the original question, is that as a telecom provider, what you're doing is not necessarily atypical, meaning that other telecoms, I'm assuming, are doing these type of deployments. I mean, without specifically naming the competition or other telcos, it's not just a question of converting legacy infrastructure to new types of networks and technologies, 5G, et cetera. It's actually, you're doing, as you said, greenfield projects, and in this case, Kubernetes deployments, which I think a lot of people here would think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, so what I think really differs for us, or us from others, is that we kind of have our own platform team.
Yeah.
Where others might have chosen a partner or a vendor for that.
Yeah.
And really, we really said it's a core business for us, kind of, and it's really a core interest to do Kubernetes in-house and to get that knowledge in-house. And that's why we do the platform on our own. Well, not on our own, really, together with Weaveworks, as I've already mentioned. Investing really in this Kubernetes knowledge. And this is actually something I really want to say. Even if you are just deploying on Kubernetes, you still need some Kubernetes knowledge in the end. And it might make sense to discuss, do I want to do Kubernetes on my own if it's really something that is part of my core business, or if that's something I want to push out to a partner or not.
Excellent. That was excellent. Really great. And this is B. Cameron Gain at KubeCon CloudNativeCon 2022 at Valencia, Spain. I think one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen, quite honestly. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Samy Nitsche.
Thank you.
Chris Dziomba of Deutsche Telekom. Thanks so much.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.